This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, my name's Alex Weaver, and I'm going to be sharing with y'all today a little bit about the book that I read called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. So I'll start off with just a brief background on the author. So Paulo is a Brazilian lyricist and novelist that walked the 500-mile Road de Santiago pilgrimage in 1986, and during this journey realized he wasn't actually pursuing his real passion of writing and therefore wasn't fulfilled in life. A couple years after making this pilgrimage, he wrote this book called The Alchemist. I'll share a little bit about what the story entails. So, The Alchemist is a story about a young Andalusian shepherd named Santiago and his pursuit of what the book calls his personal legend. The story begins with a young boy named Santiago recounting these reoccurring dreams he's had every single time he sleeps underneath this sycamore tree that's located in the center of the ruins of a church. In this dream, a child is playing with his sheep and instructs Santiago to seek out his treasure and tells him that it's buried at the foot of Egyptian pyramids. However, Santiago awakens each time before the child shows him the exact location of his treasure. So, that in mind, Santiago decides to seek out a gypsy to help him interpret his dreams. And she gives him a very literal interpretation and instruction to seek out his treasure at the pyramids. So, after receiving this guidance from the gypsy and also a king he ran into along the way about what his dream meant, he decides to embark on this journey to find his treasure. This journey is what the king refers to as his true personal legend. Now, I want to kind of tee this up before going into more detail about the book and just let everyone know exactly what a personal legend is. So essentially what a personal legend is each person on this earth has a specific purpose or destiny that they should pursue. Essentially, it's the means by which an individual lives a satisfying life. Before Santiago embarks on his journey, he ran across a king who told him a personal legend is essentially what you have always wanted to accomplish. He tells him a story that everyone, when they're young, knows what their personal legend is. And it's at that point in their lives that everything is clear and everything is possible. We're not afraid to dream or to yearn for everything that we would like to see happen in our lives. But then as time passes, as we get older, a mysterious force begins to convince us that it will be impossible for us to realize our personal legend. So fundamentally, a personal legend is our duty to unlock and pursue that purpose. The author is calling us to realize what that purpose is and put that calling into action. And don't allow our fears to ruin the journey. So after receiving this guidance from both the old gypsy and the king, he begins his journey to the Egyptian pyramids, where along the way he meets a handful of people who help him get closer and closer to achieving and understanding his personal legend. A few of which of the characters I'd like to go into a little bit more detail. He met quite a few folks along the way, but I think that these are really the key characters from the book. So one of the friends that he met was a crystal merchant who taught him the importance of heeding to omens and not allowing fear to keep him from accomplishing his dreams. The old man would tell him, every blessing ignored becomes a curse. Another friend he met along the way was an Englishman who helped him understand the importance of not getting too distracted by what you see around you, so much so that you lose sight of your purpose. Along his way, Santiago was told a parable of a boy who visited a king's palace and was given a spoon of oil and told to take himself on a tour of the castle, but to not spill the oil in the spoon while doing so. Upon return to the king, he asked the boy what he saw. The boy admitted, "I didn't see anything because my only concern was not spilling the oil." The king advised him to go back and observe the marvels of his world. So the boy did, and upon his return, the king told him about the wonders he observed and his kingdom. However, there was no oil left in his spoon. The king then gave the boy advice to carry with him, and that advice was, the secret of happiness is to seek all the marvels of the world and to never forget the drops of oil in the spoon. I feel in this book that the Englishman essentially was guilty of focusing too much attention towards his books, and he was ignoring all the beauty and the wonder around him and all the signs to help guide him to the Englishman's purpose, which the Englishman's pursuit was actually trying to learn to become an alchemist. And essentially what an alchemist is someone who turns any sort of element into gold. So the Englishman was too skeptical and too distracted by his books and by all the distractions around him that he didn't actually get to enjoy his journey. And lastly, the last friend I want to tell you all about is The Alchemist. The Alchemist is a 200-year-old expert in his field of alchemy who understands and teaches Santiago about the universal language. He shows him how to listen for and interpret that universal language, which refers to the language understood by all of creation, both living and non-living. The alchemist mainly functions as Santiago's teacher, though he often speaks in riddles and expects Santiago to learn more through experience than through verbal instruction. The alchemist exhibits a hands-off method of teaching that leads you to believe that no direct form of instruction can allow someone to connect with what the book calls the soul of the world. Instead, he wants Santiago to learn and transform himself by listening to his own heart and his own environment. And in fact, I think that this is a lesson that any student can learn. And actually, along the way, Santiago accuses the alchemist of not teaching him anything along the way. And the alchemist told him, there's no one way to learn. There's only one way to learn, and that's through action. Everything you need to know, you have learned through your journey. When the boy finally makes his way to the pyramids, he digs morning and night at the spot he believes holds his treasure, only to be found by a few thieves in the night who beat him until he confesses to attempting to dig for a treasure he dreamt about. The thieves believe him to be a fool for traveling hundreds of miles across deserts in search of a treasure he only dreamed of, and they decided to leave him to die. But before leaving, the leader of the thieves tells Santiago about his own reoccurring dreams he'd had only 2 years prior in the same spot that they'd found Santiago. The leader told him that he dreamt that he should travel to the fields of Spain and look for a ruined church where the shepherds and their sheep slept. In his dream, there was a sycamore growing out of the ruins of a church, and he was told that if he dug at the roots of that sycamore, he would find a hidden treasure. It was at that very moment that Santiago realized where his treasure had been all along. After making the journey back to his homelands where he used to care for his sheep, he finds the church where he had his original dream and found his treasure buried right where the thief had told him. The boy then finds the humor in God's plan and asks why he didn't just guide him there all along. And God replied, "If I had told you, you wouldn't have seen the pyramids. They're beautiful, aren't they?" I think this story is really fueled with a lot of lessons of passion, trials of fear and uncertainties, perseverance, and in many aspects illustrates the need of driving one's capacity towards fulfilling their passion and calling. The value of this journey does not lie in the treasure at the end, but in the knowledge and experience that Santiago gains from the journey itself. Emphasis that pursuing one's personal legend can also lead to material wealth. I personally love this book. I read it a few years ago when I picked it up to start reading again for this project. I made a promise to myself that this is a book that I'm actually going to try reading every single year. I was in a completely different headspace this time since it was for a project, and I feel like I picked up a lot of new messages that I hadn't quite digested the first time I read it. I think it's just an incredible read. It's full of really valuable lessons of perseverance, and I highly recommend it to any one of y'all. Thank you so much for listening.